This is Lauren Kaufman, and welcome to the Innovator's Mindset podcast.
There we go. Look at that. That's a big deal, hey?
Big deal. Big deal.
It's like interesting because a lot of people have been doing it, and I'm just seeing like how good is your timing, how good's my timing, and so just being able to
How
press
was
that
it?
button right, it was great. You did a great job.
How did I
So
do?
yeah, so
Well, I've listened to enough of your podcasts,
I know
Uh,
you told me.
but wait a minute, I'm the host now,
Right.
right? So I start this podcast, right, George?
You do.
Uh, I am just like deeply grateful to be here. And when you asked me to host this podcast, it was like a total full circle moment for me because it all started with the innovator's mindset for me many years ago. I know the book is 10 years old now, but I discovered it, I want to say like 6 years ago
Yeah.
or so. And it definitely changed the trajectory of my thinking around learning, around teaching, about the way I lead and interact at every level in education. So the fact that you just invited me here, this is a great moment for me because let me tell you something, this book, Forward Together, is absolutely incredible. I love it.
I
I
love
am
it.
so happy that this book is out in the world right now. And I was so enthusiastic when you sent this book to me, which, by the way, you sent the book to me to preview in the holiday chaos. I was
Sorry.
finishing projects
I'm
for
sorry.
work. It was a little bit of a crazy week, but we do the things that we value and we prioritize. And I was like, I'm making this happen. And I remember I had my kids even had stuff that week, and I was going to sports and I was running here and running there and running meetings. And it would be like 9 o'clock at night. And I said, I'm going to finish this book because I need to give George the endorsement. And I read it in 2 sittings. I probably would have read it in one sitting. I just didn't have the
Oh.
capacity to do that. And and if I wasn't falling asleep, I probably would have finished it in one sitting.
But you
But
weren't
I
you weren't falling
love
asleep because of the book. That's what you're
no,
saying.
no, no. Oh, let
Just
me
make
make
sure.
that clear. Let me make that clear.
All
I
right.
mean, I am in bed, by like 10 o'clock every night, passed out sleeping. I wake up pretty early in the morning. And it was also a challenge for me because I wasn't reading it the first time around the way I normally read books. When I read a book that I'm loving, I open the notes section to my smartphone immediately and I start taking notes
Mhm.
about the book, all the quotes that are resonating with me. And as I'm reading it, I go, oh my gosh, I love this. Oh my gosh, I love that. Like every single sentence to me practically was a quote that I could revisit time and time again. So I knew that over the holiday break, I would need to revisit the book, which by the way, thank you
Mhm.
sending me the
The
cleanest copy
the
because
cleanest copy. Yeah.
I don't have the hard copy yet in my hands. And that's exactly the way I read it, the way I like to read it the other day. And I had to text you immediately. Oh my goodness. I think that this book, I'm confident that this book is going to be a staple. It's one of those timeless books, just like The Innovator's Mindset, that will be revisited by educators, by leaders, by communities who are looking to change the trajectory of their path together, not
Yeah.
just as a one person, as a solo show, right? But together as a community. So, my first question for you, George, really
Wait, just wait
is,
before you get your
yeah.
questions. I gotta
Oh,
just say, first of
okay.
all, for if anyone doesn't know Lauren, she's been on how many times have you been on my podcast? It's been several times now. It's like the fourth time, maybe fourth or fifth.
No, maybe the third or fourth time.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons there's actually a few reasons why I asked Lauren to read this. First of all, she's a very good friend, and I appreciate it. And one of the things I do, and it's like a little behind the scenes with people, and I'm very adamant about this. A lot of people write endorsements for books and don't actually read the book, which just drives me bonkers. I just hate it, and I will never endorse a book unless I read the entire thing. Because if my name's going on it, like I want to know what is in that book. And so every endorsement, one of the things that I really appreciate is that people read the entire book and they shared that with me and talked about that. And so I do know you and Lauren actually is works at the district level in Long Island. A lot of the people that I actually reference in the book, you know, in a very distinguished way, which is really fascinating. So I know that connected with you in many ways. And also, Lauren has an incredible blog, and she's a very gifted writer. So there's a little nervousness when, you know, you're given to someone who writes, you know, continuously, has her own book out, has done some great stuff. And so when I really appreciated the endorsement that you wrote, but that you reread it without me asking you to reread it, and then you talked about how, you know, how much of an impact it could make. That really, it was right after I did like a horribly long run, and I was exhausted, and I saw it, and I was just like, oh, this is like the best message to get ever. So you get 3 questions here. I know, even though you're the host, there is one I have for you, and then the rest of the show is yours. So I think one of the things that I wanted to do this, why I asked people to guest host this, is because like I wanted their questions, whatever resonated with you, and being at the district level. But like, what was your takeaway? You know, especially specifically in the work that you do. Like, what really resonated with you, and like, why could this help? You know, someone in your position or someone doing something similar.
Sure. This is pretty easy for me to
Mm.
answer. There were so many aspects of this book that resonated with me, like I said before. And wait, before I give you this answer, I just want to thank you for saying all that nice
Yeah,
and kind stuff.
all true. It's all true. You know, I only say true
And
things, so I don't just compliment for the sake of complimenting. That's not me.
I know you don't. And one of the things I appreciate about our friendship is that you have this ability to tell me what I'm doing well and to guide me when you feel I could do better. Uh, but, you know, with that said, this book for me, as I was reading it and I was
Mm.
going through every principle and every part of the book, for me, I first of all, I felt like you were speaking right to me. And that feels good when you read a book because you don't want a book that feels like a white paper all the time, like just a bunch of research, which that's important too. I
Yep.
read a lot of research in my role and I need to know that stuff. So I'm not saying that's not important, but I felt like you were opening this path for me, like you've done for me so many times before. You've been a guide for me already, and I just feel like this just opened another path, guiding me to a new destination, to my next destination. And I've served in a lot of roles in education. This is my 20th year in education. I've been a classroom teacher. I've been a literacy specialist at the elementary and middle school level. I've been an instructional coach. Been an assistant principal. Now I'm a district leader with a lens on literacy and education right now. So as I'm reading this book, I'm bringing all of these lenses to the text and the way that I'm transacting with the text and taking it all in. And for me, this comes at the perfect time because we have been on the precipice of change and evolution, which we always were in education. But I think post 2020, there have been so many changes happening so quickly that one of the things I loved about this book is you didn't give this book, you're not telling people what to do in education, right? You're not saying this is the framework, this is the one way,
Mhm.
this is the guide. You are asking people in a very invitational tone to come together, to work together, to listen intently together, to honor one another where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, um, in a way that makes you feel like it's okay to encounter these obstacles that we're facing in education with an open mind and an open heart, and to invite people, to continue to invite people to have a seat at the table, even when they have perspectives that feel different than your own.
Right. Right.
And something that stood out to me was that when you work with groups of educators across the country, that you want to know, is there something that I said that you mentioned in the book? Is there something
Yeah.
that I said that you don't agree with today? Because I want you to tell me right here and now. It's not going to help after the fact, right?
Right.
Let's have this conversation together. And I want to learn from it because I can still learn. So, something that really resonated with me in the work that I do with this book is that there are lots of opinions
Yeah.
around teaching and learning and education and literacy and things. And I just feel like I have become more open over the past several years into hearing all the perspectives, and I have learned from every single person, every single conversation, big and small, whether it was people who are in the room with me or things that I've heard, conversations that I've heard outside of the room. Um, it also confirmed or reaffirmed that we have to notice. We have to have the ability to not just always enter a conversation just to talk or to speak or say our piece, but to notice what's happening
Mm.
around us, to look at not what people, not just what they say, but what they do, right? And when we notice, we can take what we notice and we can make something and build something better together. The piece where you also talk about confidence, which is one of the lessons I'm carrying forward this year, is to continue to build confidence in the work that I do. Is it's just noticing really that you got here for a reason, to respect the path where you've been, where you are now, and to think about that things are always changing as you move forward and that you have to have comfort with uh, living with some failure, living with some obstacles and learning from that. So I think that's really, I know that was a lot, but there is a lot in this book
Well,
that resonated with me.
when we were talking yesterday, you actually, and I pulled it up and I actually put it on a card because I was, even when I wrote it, it's something I'm like, I don't know what's going to resonate with people. And sometimes people say something to me and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good point. And it was, the one quote you shared with me, you said, the goal isn't to hand you answers, it's to offer a lens so you can make a better sense of your own context. And I think this is a really big thing in education and something I really gravitated towards over the years. I don't like being told what to do. And that is like, as soon as you tell me you have to do this, I like go the opposite way. I'm like, no, I'm actually not going to do it now because you're trying to force this upon me. And it makes me like kind of intuitively want to push back. And so that's something I'm really thoughtful of when I go into a district. Like, hey, I'm just sharing some perspectives for you, but you got to like figure out because you know your own context better than anybody. And a lot of the feedback, and I really appreciate this on the book, was that it's not in a condescending tone; it's a conversational tone, which you had mentioned. And but ultimately saying like, hey, I'm not, and some people might think I'm not taking positions for a distinct reason. And there is, like, if you want a vision of education, read The Innovator's Mindset, because I create a really, I think, compelling vision there. But that's not what this book is. It's for you to, like, you figure out where you're trying to go. And as you said, where you've been, where you want to go through that process. But it is that own context. I think that really matters. So when you were saying that to me, that made me feel very validated because, you want people to kind of figure out where they are on that path. So I love that feedback.
I do think that this book, Forward Together, is an important read with the innovator's mindset because you can't do anything without your community, every level of your community within education, and not just in education, but this book goes beyond education, right? So you speak to education directly in this book, but I was thinking about other places I've been, other careers that I've had even prior to education. I look around me at my friends who are in different fields, and I was thinking that the importance of community is essential because you can't make great teaching and learning happen. You can't embrace those 8 characteristics of the innovator's mindset without having the support of community. So I think there's a nice bridge there between your two books. I know we're talking about Forward Together, but when I was reading Forward Together, I couldn't help but think about the innovator's mindset because that can't happen without the community piece.
Love it. I really appreciate, the you're trying when you're writing something, and I know you understand this from your experience of writing. You're you're not like I hate, like I said, I don't like being told what to do. I really try, and I was thinking about this even today when I see like a Instagram post or a TikTok. It's like you should. I'm like, no, whatever you're about to say, I don't care anymore. Like, so I always try to say like, hey, here's something that works for me, or here's where I messed up, and try to figure out how to make it right. And I think people appreciated that approach because it's not me telling you. It's like, hey, here's even, and I think a lot of people, one of the things that people have really said about the book that is the vulnerability of like talking about mistakes I've made and why they did the exact opposite of what I had hoped for in that process, and really identifying that. And I've said this probably a million times in the last month or so, the focus on sharing my hindsight to, inform someone's foresight to not make some of those mistakes or to catch them before they really happen in a bad direction. So I do appreciate that, because I hope that, you read this in your role and you have some really beneficial takeaways. And, like I always think about the idea of learning targets, and people talk about this, but really when people walk into any room, they have different experiences, they have different places that they're at and different wants. So everyone should take away their own things. Right. And so to me, that really embodies the idea that all learning is personal. All of it is personal. And I appreciate, share that context, because, if you're a teacher in the classroom, I hope you'll get a lot of stuff from this book as well, but it will be different than maybe what you do in your current role. And if you change roles in 2 years, then, the book might have different things for you. It's not like, hey, this is only for these people. It's for like wherever you're at, what resonates with you. So that really matters. Now, that was my question. So that's it. Now it's back to the Lauren show, which I love. So much,
Okay.
so way less pressure on me to come up with questions. So
I just have to say one thing before I ask
sure.
my first question. You're reminding me of something that you illuminate in this book, which is the importance of story. And you talk about people need to see themselves in a story, and you share a really cool story about an interaction you had with somebody at an event that you were at who disagreed with you. And I won't tell the whole story because I would love for people to experience it for the first time. I think it just really resonated with me. So I think we have to share our stories. We have to tell our stories, the times that we've not only succeeded, but the times we've made mistakes. And you do that so beautifully throughout this book. So this book weaves together some great quotes that you always have. I feel like you writing quotes, but story. And then here's what this can look like in your community. It's actionable and ideas to think about that leaders and educators, students, who are the most important stakeholders in our communities, right? It's all about the students. What can we do tomorrow to lead change in a really intentional and purposeful way? And I just need to share before my first question that you did share a blog post in your book that I quickly looked up about the different types of stories and the story arcs.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, as a literacy person, I immediately sent an email to my middle school and high school English teachers that's sharing that with them. And I tell them where I get it from, but it's, I just want to say, when we talk about ideas you can implement tomorrow, I immediately did a send email to share. So
that part, there's one part, and it is, I actually reread it myself like many times, and there's one line that I said that made me laugh because I talked about the story arc and how there should be an emotional connection. And I said that, a lot of PD, professional learning, is flat, like it's a flat line. And I said, do you know when else there's a flat line? It's when you're dead.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's kind of true, right? That's That's the other flat line is you're dead.
I did
And so
laugh a lot in this book too. It was very funny.
even
So
even
that's important.
I was like, what was I thinking when I wrote that? But this is true. It
Well,
is true.
definitely will wake people up when they read that. No, they'll be up. I am confident the whole time they're reading this book. Not like me falling
Right,
asleep.
right.
That was
Fall
only
asleep
because I was
because
tired.
you're so
Okay.
tired.
Okay. So here's my first question for you.
All right.
You have been blogging and writing and co-writing books for many, many
Hmm.
years, and books that have had such an impact on educational communities. So as you think about Forward Together now,
Hmm.
what makes you the most proud about this particular book?
I just think that first of all, I think there's a huge issue in education right now. There's a lot of contentiousness, as you know, as kind of mentioned in the title, and I don't think it needs to be that way. And in all honesty, sometimes, and I kind of emulate this myself, we maybe create that problem sometimes ourselves, and maybe we don't even create the problem, but then really kind of looking at the solution. So when I like look back at some of the stories, I think it's kind of resonating what education can be, what happens when we do come together and how powerful that can be. But it was also, and I think this is where I take a lot of pride in it, is I grew up in a small town and really benefited from just a community that worked together. And I'm of the age where, and I maybe shouldn't say this, where if you got in trouble at school, and you got a call home, you were also getting in trouble at home. Do you know what I mean? Like it was
Mm.
that was the time that I grew up in. And there is such a cohesion in how people work together. And like how my parents and it was not, hey, let's make sure you really give it to George and gets home because he deserves it. It's like, hey, we have to make sure together that we help kids be successful. And so it's almost like, hey, are there's a little like, hey, here's what we can be in the future, but also here's what we can learn from a really powerful past where schools will really work together with families. And I don't want to say like, hey, schools are the issue and families are right. I'm not, that is not the argument I'm making in any context. It's just saying, hey, like what is really kind of what happens when we kind of focus on how we bring people in and how we have those conversations. And it's, you can say like, hey, parents are, and I don't like saying parents or teachers as like a whole group, like parents are bad, teachers are bad, anything like that. But it is when you kind of get people on side and you get work and they feel ownership, then and I even put it right in the dedication is it was to all the communities that really focus on that, because when families and schools work together, they double the chance of success for a kid. And I just think that it's kind of like an ode to my experience in school and really growing out of a great community that really came together. I know this. I don't. I'm like a little nervous to bring this up. There is a huge accident where I grew up with a hockey team there, and it was probably about 7 years ago. It was horrible, and a lot of people have died, and it's one of the worst. It is the worst thing that ever happened in that community, and it was also like there's just a little bit of comfort knowing that that was just such a good community, and they would support each other through something so horrific. And I know that's, but you never want anything to happen like that, but it was just like it impacted so many people, and it's like, thank goodness there's that school and that community works together, because like it'd be so hard to deal with this if they didn't. And like I think about that all the time and how proud I am from growing up in that community and watching the school really support me, and that, I think that's one of the things I'm really passionate about and why I'm so proud of this. The other thing that I think I'm really proud of is that this book did not exist in my mind one July morning, and then I saw something from someone Paul Romanelli, it wasn't actually from him. It was from, I don't know if you know Jesse. Is it Jesse Foss? he's a teacher there. He tweeted something. He just tagged me in it, and I wasn't even gonna watch what he had shared. I was at the gym, literally at the time. I was just finishing up working out, and I ended up watching it. And within moments, I was like, I have an idea for a book, and it's something that you can kind of like. I've been writing about kind of this stuff. You know, I've been writing so much and really trying to be the model of, you know, not arguing with people, but trying to have discussions rather than debates and doing that. That's what I'm really trying to be focused on or trying to focus on. And so that book was not only inspired by my experience as a student, but seeing what amazing schools are already doing. And because we were like, here's this problem, here's this problem. Like, actually, there's a lot of people doing this really well right now. And so that, I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of is that it's like, hey, this, and I said this in Innovator's Mindset. Basically, somebody somewhere is solving the problem you say like can't be solved. Like you just got to find them. And so I was hopefully illuminating some of these really great districts. And it's funny because we're recording this. I don't even know if that teacher knows that he inspired this book, but I'm sending a book to Paul and Jesse. And
Aw.
I'm like excited for him because it's right in the end that it's so I think
Aw.
it's partly some of my experience and I think really helped me to grow into the adult I am. Not that like I have tons of, you know, flaws, obviously, but also because there's already really great schools that are really focusing on building community. And I know you worked with Paul I think at a different district,
Yes.
but I don't
Yes,
think
I did.
I don't think this is surprising that to you that Paul's
Yeah.
district, because you know how Paul is a
Mhm.
place that really does everything to bring the community in and work with them, not bring them in to tell them what they're doing, but to work with them. And I think that's what I'm most
Yeah.
proud of. It's that this is already being done. And so just trying to find as many of those stories as possible and highlighting them and, you know, showing the pathway they've already illuminated for so many schools.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that was a fun surprise at the
Mhm.
end to see how his district was highlighted, but it
Yeah.
totally doesn't surprise me. And that was also a full circle moment for me because he had given me an opportunity
Mhm.
when I brought him the innovator's mindset when I was running a mentor program in that district. And that's really how we connected. So
Well,
I am
I
not
don't know if you remember
surprised.
this, but you connected me and Paul because I think I spoke virtually to your district because you suggested, and that was the first time I connected with Paul. And then he went to a new district. He brought me in, you know, so it
Well,
is lots of circles here, hey?
it's awesome. Lots of circles. He's a great educator, great leader, and I'm so
Mhm.
glad that his district is highlighted in your book. They're doing great work.
Highlighted and
And
inspired the book. So
inspire the book.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's pretty amazing. So I feel proud of that and I'm not surprised. So thank you for sharing that and it was fun to see. Um, and you know, you say in the book that the intention, and this is a quote from the book,
Mhm.
that the intention of this book is to initiate productive conversations with our communities. But the answer you were looking for, as Whitney Houston shares, is within you.
Right, right.
Is within you. So, and you say if you look for obstacles, you'll find them. If you look for opportunities for and with your community, they might find you. So,
Mhm.
I think that what you just shared, that story of how you were inspired by something Paul's district was doing, and that inspired you to write the book, that found it almost found you,
Totally,
right?
totally.
As an
Well,
opportunity to write this.
it's like if
So, that's
you know this, and this is the thing,
mhm.
you buy a new car, right? And you barely see them. And then as soon as you buy that car, you see them over and over and over again, right? And it's like basically whatever you have on your mind tends to find you over and over again. And it's not because it tends to find you, you just become so much more aware of it. And I think that's something I really believe in. You know, as soon as I started really focusing on innovation years ago, I could see it in everything. I can see it, you know, in a commercial, in this and that, because it is something that's on my mind. So that's the thing. You're always looking for those opportunities. You're looking for that. But if you're like, oh, this is horrible, guess what you're gonna find? A bunch of horrible stuff. That's how that works. So it is really where your mentality is focused. Is not that those things necessarily find you, but they tend to when you're just kind of focused on those things.
Absolutely. This book feels so deeply reflective and grounded in the idea of becoming
Hmm.
rather than arriving. We're still becoming, right?
Hmm.
We never get there, we never arrive. So, how did your own growth as a leader and learner shape the way you wrote Forward Together?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how I start off the book with a blog post that, and you and I talked about this yesterday, that I'm super embarrassed by that I wrote,
Mhm.
but I'm also proud of that I've grown and can look back on that. And that's one of the things I love about blogging. I think that post was written in 2011. Here we are in, entering 2026. People are listening to this in 2026. So almost 15 years later. And that post is still up on my site. And it's saying like, I keep it there because it is a good reminder of how much I've grown, how much I think differently about, and even the argument saying that I still believe in many of the things I said, but my approach was terrible. And I actually dismissed a lot of people through this. And so, again, when you're looking for stuff, I was at a conference last year and I saw someone talking about de emphasizing memorization. And so I know that many of the districts you've worked with, in your career, if you said to your staff, we need to de emphasize memorization, you would half your staff immediately. Half your staff would be arguing about it and saying, why? No, this is so crucial, et cetera, et cetera. And some people are like, no, we have Google, we have ChatGPT, we don't need to do those things anymore. And so some of those little statements create that divide and through that process. And so when you hear that term like de-emphasize memorization, or we don't need to do this, we don't need to do this, immediately people feel you are taking something away from them, right? So when I kind of shifted my thinking is like, hey, when we focus on really deep learning, and that is an emphasis on the work that we do, um, by default, if you get a kid to really deeply understand something, they'll memorize it. And so now you're honoring the people still that believe memorization is really, really crucial, but you're also saying like, hey, like, but we need to go beyond. And you're focusing them not on what they're losing, but what they have the opportunity to aspire toward while building upon the great work they're already doing. But also you're challenging the people a little bit like, yeah, memorization actually is kind of crucial. You should know certain things because then you can really go deeply when you know that too. And so you're trying to be really thoughtful of how you bring people together. And I think that's where the reflection came in, is how many times was I focused on taking away something without showing them what is possible. And
Mm.
again, what you mentioned earlier, where they were not where they not only fit into the story, but they were crucial to its success. And that is a lot. It's not that I disagree with many of my ideas on education that I've had over the years, including in that blog post that I went through. It is, how did I get the people who might not have agreed with me to kind of see their place in that and really kind of be thoughtful of that. You even see like in my blog, I still do this to this day. I'll say things like, I'm not saying. And so it's basically, I know, like, I'm really trying to be understanding of the pushback that could happen. So I make sure that I address that and say, this is not a thing that's being taken away. Here's the opportunity that exists. And that's where I've really grown. And, I challenged you years ago to blog. And I think what it does to you, there's a huge difference between writing in a journal that no one's ever going to read to writing in a blog where anyone can read, because you're kind of thinking, what is the perspective I'm missing? Um, what is the hole in my maybe not my argument, but my perspective right now that I need to address? And I even wrote a whole post on, does ChatGPT or AI make you more empathetic? And the answer is no, it doesn't. But if you threw in a post and you say, okay, what am I missing? Like, what am I missing? It could actually reveal perspectives that you might not have considered. And so ultimately, it's the human that leverages the technologies to actually understand other people's perspectives that you might have missed. I think that was the most important thing. And trying to illuminate that, you do want people to go, have I done that before? Like, have I been that issue? Like, have I, like, I'm not asking people to change their belief system. I'm asking them to think about how do they get people to embrace it, right? Like, we're really passionate about something. You want as many people to embrace it, but do you push them away in how you share it? And that's what I realize about myself. And so you're hoping people see themselves in the story that I'm writing and sharing.
Yeah, you talk about it in the book and also in your talks. I've heard you say this about the warm bath and the cold
Yeah.
shower. And I think you just described that with the cold shower.
Hmm.
Have you done that before? Have
Yeah.
have you thought about this before? And I think that's what you've done for me over the years. You always get me to think about something that I might not have thought about myself based on your experiences. And that's what we hope to do for each other in this life, in this one beautiful life that we have,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as we evolve as people, as educators, we want books and writing and content to make us think a little bit differently. Because as you said before, you don't want to be told
Mm-hmm.
what to do all the time.
Yep.
But if you're gently pushed to think differently in that way that you just explained, I think that's amazing.
I want to just take a step back and share something that I think is the reason why I'm like so big on conversation. You reached out to me one day, and I can't remember what it was, but you had asked for my advice. And I'm driving, just finished at the gym, and I I said, I'd actually do this, this, and this. And you're like, no, I think I'm gonna do this. And I listen to you, I'm like, yeah, that's actually a way better idea. Your idea is way better than what I just said. And I don't know if you had that idea before we got in the conversation or you got it as we're talking. Like, no, actually, what he's saying, I'm going to do something a little bit different. But it shows you, even when you have the conversation and you like maybe ask for perspective, it might even just you saying out loud could actually change your perspective. And again, like I didn't say, no, I'm right, you're wrong, do what I'm doing. I told you me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually way better than what I just said. And that's where I talk about that confidence scale, right? To say like, hey, I actually, that's okay, I got it wrong. I've done pretty well, like but I also can get better. And that's where it is, where if you go to the arrogance, no, you're wrong, I'm right because I'm smarter than you. Insecurity, no, 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 no. Like that's where it's like, no, that's a good thing. I think that's why we want conversations, is sometimes kind of going back to the answers within you. That answer was within you, but maybe you need to say something out loud, ask the question. And I really have this idea that sometimes when you just have the conversation, you leave your own body and you can listen to yourself talk, and then you start giving yourself advice like you would a friend. And I think you did that day. So I think that's why those conversations really matter. So that was, if
Yeah.
you ever heard that podcast, that was Lauren who I gave terrible advice to.
Yeah, I think you sent me that podcast, and I do
Mhm.
remember the conversation. And I
Mhm.
think the longer we're friends, the more, I think the less I'm worried about what you're going to think,
Yeah.
because I know that, our friendship is solid. And,
All my
you
advice
know,
is, all the perspectives I get is because I believe in you so much, not because, yeah,
I believe that you
yeah,
have truly
yep.
given me wings, as have, I just
Mhm.
remember great leaders, great mentors, great friends, they're always going to ground you and give you clarity
Mhm.
that you're looking for. And that's something that you do so well for me, and so many others. And I just want to say, you did mention blogging a lot in
Yeah.
this conversation. And I want to say to your audience that this isn't specific to me. I know you challenged me to blog,
Mhm.
uh, but I have been in spaces with mutual friends like Megan Lawson, like Allison Apsey. Katie Novak just shot me an email not too long ago saying, wait a minute, this George Couros, she's hysterical. She's like, this George Couros, what is he, like the grandfather of blogging? He's gotten
I don't
everyone
want
to
to be called
blog.
grandfather or anything.
But no, no, no. She was, where she was
I
going.
know.
So, but something that resonated with me, and I do think it connects to your book,
Mhm.
about something you always say to me about me with my blogging and my writing, or anybody who does something with repetition and makes it a habit. just like anything in life. He said,
Mhm.
Lauren, I only challenged you. You actually did it and then
Right.
continued to do that.
Yeah.
So I think when we think about community, which is what your book, Forward Together, is so centered on, it's like, as Dave Burgess would say, I heard him say this in a podcast once and it really resonated with me. And you share a great story with him in the
Yeah.
book. Is he always say, what he says, what's an idea without implementation?
Right.
Lots of people have ideas, but are you willing to share it? Are you willing
Yep.
to go forward with it? So, yeah. This is really hard. This is my last question, and I'm really sad because I have like 7 questions here, and I'm trying to choose which one to ask.
All
But I
right.
think I'll go with
I'll have it.
this one, and then I'll just ask you the other questions another time. So, as readers
Yeah.
engage with this book, and they bring their own experiences and their own stories into it, how do you see their voices continuing the work that you started in this book?
Yeah. The one of the or anecdote stories I talk about is my former superintendent. Her name is Marilyn Campbell. She said to me, like when I became a principal, she said, one of the things that will really will show your impact is when you leave this school, when you're done, because you'll be done at some point, right? You don't know when, but you will be done, which is every educator, right? Wherever you are right now, you will be leaving there at some point. It could be in 2 months, it could be in 20 years. She said, what will your fingerprints be? How will people know that you were there? And what of course you want to have an impact. You want to do stuff that, it continues long on after. But my biggest thing was the impact of the things that I did as a principal that you would see other people's fingerprints over top of mine as well, that we were doing this together. And I think that's, this about me. And I think I'm pretty open about this. I'm super competitive. I want to be anything I do. I want to be the best at. It's something I'm very passionate about, and to almost to a fault. It's growing up watching Michael Jordan, and what you realize when you go into a leadership position like you're in right now is that when you beat others in leadership, that's actually your biggest failure. That's when you lose. It's when you actually lead other people to doing great things. It's when you actually get people to lead in your organization in different aspects and you become the follower as well. Those things are interchangeable. It's not, and I think that's where I really want to see this going. And I want to see people's impact is how they impact others to have their fingerprints on there. And that ultimately is your fingerprint, which is the weirdest thing to say, is that you inspiring others to lead, you inspiring others to do. And that's, going back to the competitive nature, what I learned really quickly is I cannot win in educational leadership if it's just about me. The only way that you win and thrive is when other people do great stuff. And that's ultimately how you win. I know it's like a weird thing to say, but that is like, there are some people who are very competitive in education and their whole thing is beating down others. And that's where you lose. That's what I really believe. It is really how you lift other people up to have their impact. So I don't know if that answers your question, but being
I,
honest, that is one of my weaknesses and one of my strengths. So taking your weakness to make it your strength in education, I think, is something that matters.
yeah, I always ask myself this question, when I could have some really awesome days and
Yeah.
then some really challenging days and a mix of everything in between, right? And I feel everything pretty deeply, but I have to know when to use heart, when to use
Mhm.
mind. And it's always the same question, Lauren, what type of leader do you want to be? And the answer is the type of leader I always needed. And it
Totally.
goes back to, how do you want to be remembered? What legacy do you want to leave behind? Not only as an educator, but as a human being, right? So
Mhm.
if you can leave people better
Yep.
after reading your content and your work and your book, which it always has, George. I just know, I am so confident that this book is going to inspire not only the educators of today and the future educators and the future leaders and current leaders, but for many generations to come. And that's what great books
Mhm.
do. They live inside you so that you can build that legacy. And that's exactly what you've done with Forward Together.
You're the best. Thanks for taking the time out of this. Like it really, and your feedback on it did mean a lot because I know a lot of people, and you're not excluded from this, feel overwhelmed with stuff that's going on in education right now, and that's part of the reason why I try to joke in there too. My biggest mentor ever, Kelly Wilkins, she'd always say, if you don't laugh, you'd cry. And so I'm trying to make people laugh a little bit more so they can stop
Mm-hmm.
crying a little bit less. Right.
And you
So
will. And you
yeah,
will.
and that's the hope, right? I try to poke fun at myself quite a bit just to, ease the tension of some of the really serious conversations that we have. But, it doesn't mean they're any less serious, but, having a better attitude about how we approach things could help. And that helps me. So hopefully it helps others as well. But I'll let you finish off because you're the host. Like, I don't know what to do here. This is the awkward ending part.
Okay, so this is the part where I'm going to say thank you so much for joining the Innovators Mindset Podcast with Lauren Kaufman as the host and my friend George Couros, who is awesome. And I hope that every educational community gets this book into their, not only my hands, your hands.
Yeah,
I
just
hope
say,
every
just buy books and
educational
send it to Lauren over
community,
and over again.
yes, gets this book into their hands, because I just know, I'm so confident that it will just initiate beautiful conversations and move the work and the priorities forward together.
You're the best. There we go. Love it.